Welcome to the Rock Pile. Join us, that's Oma and Lewis, as we talk about faith, culture, and a bunch of other messy subjects. You can agree or disagree. It'll be lively, likely messy, but we hope interesting. Come on our journey to understand. No rock throwing, just a rock pile. Well, here we are.
This is Oma.
And I'm Lewis, and this is the Rock Pile.
And this is Season 3, Episode 1.
Yes, it is.
And it's a new start because we took a hiatus. You know, moving does that to people.
Well, yeah, it's been a little bit, but
yes, it has.
This is a new start.
Yes, our new emphasis.
Yeah, because in Season 1, we talked about...
our testimony.
Yeah, really, yeah. We talked about testimony, things that we've experienced in our life.
Right.
Romania, that kind of things. And then the second season, we really kind of talked about or set the stage for kind of what we're going to try to do this season.
Well, we talked a little bit about political and what things were going on with gaslighting and things like that.
Right.
So now we're trying to bring it to like the shoe hits the road. What is that? What is that phrase?
Rubber hits the road.
Rubber hits the road.
Yeah, whatever. One of those old cliches, that it's so overused, we don't remember them anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so we thought we'd kind of talk about, and since about faith, things about the faith, because
yes,
that's what we say we're going to do. So, and
that's who we are.
Right. And
so today is going to be what? Mark? Yeah,
we're going to start, we're going to talk about in Mark chapter 7, verse 24. That's where we're at.
Yes. Let's read that first.
Yeah. It's about the Syrophoenician woman. And you guys, gals or people on the other listening in may very well be familiar with this, but we'll read it anyway so we get a context. So I'm reading chapter 7, verse 24 from let me get the version. It's the Amplified Bible. So Jesus got up and left there and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon, the coastal area of Phoenicia. And he entered a house and did not want anyone to know about it, but it was impossible for him to be hidden from the public. Instead of after hearing about him, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately came and fell at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Greek, a Syrophoenician by nationality, and she kept pleading with him to drive the demon out of her daughter. He was saying to her, "First, let the children of Israel be fed, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the pet dogs." And this, they have the amplified non-Jews. But she replied, "Yes, Lord, but even the pet dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And he said to her, "Because of this answer, reflecting your humility and faith, go, knowing that your request is granted. The demon has left your daughter permanently." And returning to her home, she found the child lying on the couch, resting and relaxing, the demon having gone.
Amazing story.
Yes. And so let's first start with, for those people who may not know, or, you can look it up. What book are you using there for reference for Tyre?
This is the Bible Dictionary.
Yeah. So it's just a general dictionary about a broad range of topics.
About Tyre. But also, I'm also using the Bible Reading Archaeology.com. And it's a great reference. But anyway, give you just a little backstory about Tyre. It's right next to Sidon. And when Jesus is walking, he's on the mainland. And the mainland was mostly, from reading this archaeology, it was mostly merchants and craftsmen and like a suburbs. So this is the working people.
So there's two places here?
Yes, because the island of Tyre was out there. It was opulent and it was big. It had two great big ports, one on each side. And it was famous because it was able to, bring merchandise up and down the Mediterranean Sea.
Oh, they would use that as a port in order to enter into this area. And
both ways.
And there's a Roman road that goes from Tyre goes east. And it was very popular. That's why the Romans used that as a very popular port city.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's in the same place as kind of the ancient, where the Canaanites were when Moses brought the children of Israel over the Jordan River. Those are the Canaanites as well.
Yes.
Because there was a king of Tyre that was mentioned somewhere and you have a reference. I think.
That's King Heron.
Okay.
Of Tyre, and that would be in Solomon's day, because he had asked him, remember, to bring cedar from Lebanon, and so he made a deal with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
from the forests of Lebanon.
So he brought the
That
cedar.
would be 1 Kings 5
Okay.
reference. Yeah.
So this is the area where he's going. So it was still a popular place, a very important place in the Roman times as well, having fallen to the Romans after the fall of the Greek Empire to the Roman Empire.
Yes, because
And they-
originally it was fallen from Alexander the Great.
Okay, he had occupied most of that area.
Yeah, he
And
had.
Okay, and then so during this period of time, Tyre was under the control of Rome.
Yes.
And so Jesus is entering into the area. He's not necessarily in the city of Tyre, but he's outside of the Jewish area into the Gentile area.
Yes.
And he's staying at a house. It doesn't say whether it's a Jewish house or a Greek house, but fact of the matter, he's outside of the Jewish-controlled area of Israel in what's now in Tyre and Sidon area. And he meets this lady actually comes to him. Now, I suspect that because the Romans and Greek were very religious, quote unquote, meaning they had multiple gods, versus the Israelites having a monotheistic perspective, the one God that didn't have an idol, and that was a bone of contention, another cliche with the Romans, because they didn't have an idol to represent this God
Of Yahweh. Yes.
And so this lady would then be
A Baal worshiper.
a Baal worshiper,
Yeah,
or
because they were known to have a huge shrine or temple to Baal on the actual central island
of Tyre.
Tyre.
Okay,
Yeah.
and there will also be the Greek remnant of the Delphi. So this would be a place that was
Well, the equivalent to Baal in Greek would have been Hercules.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so so then they would have knowledge, or she would have knowledge of all these other deities of the I guess they called the Olympian gods, Hercules, and all those, and the Roman gods at the time, including the ancient god of Baal, that was still evident there in Tyre, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this lady then comes and says, she knows that she has, and this is the interesting piece. One of the pieces for me is that she knows that the religious system that she's in can't or won't heal her daughter.
Right. She identifies that.
By just showing up with Jesus,
Right.
to talk to Jesus, she realizes that's not possible with this religious system.
That's right.
And that's an interesting piece, considering the amount of worship and offering and sacrifices they made to these idols and what they would consider gods wouldn't deliver her from this demon possession. And she identified, and the Bible talks about, she knew that was what it was.
Yeah, she did.
So, but you think about the time, and I can't remember the reference, where Jesus was accused of being Beelzebub.
Oh,
Right?
yes. Yes. And he said, you can't get rid of, the devil can't get rid of the devil.
Why would he do that?
Yeah.
That would be dividing his
Casting
house.
out, yeah.
And that's where, as an aside, that's where that house divided
Falls.
that Lincoln got when he got the speech. The house divided against itself can't stand.
Right.
So why would Beelzebub cast out Beelzebub? He
And so
wouldn't.
she had that foreknowledge, and that's why she was there asking Jesus.
Said she'd heard about him. Now, think about, just for our discussion, think about faith. It's not like we walk around and say, oh, we have this sense that we have this desire to know God by what we see. Romans chapter 12, I think, talks about we have a knowledge of God by what we see around us. But the faith piece, has to come from someplace. And it's not going to, if we had the ability to make our own faith, so even God gives that by grace to us as well.
Yes,
so,
he does.
So,
He put the knowledge inside of us.
and he put the knowledge inside of her. Now, we may
Yes.
be reading a lot into this, but just think about that. So he's putting the knowledge into to her that he's the only one that can deliver her daughter. So she goes to him and begs him, repeatedly asking him, and finally he gives her the statement. And he says to her, she says, "First let this feed the children of Israel. It's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." And I looked up the Greek word here, and I won't, bore everybody by mispronouncing it. But essentially the word he uses is puppy, a little dog.
Isn't that neat?
And you think about, because you think it's kind of, to be honest, it's kind of a rude statement. Look, I'm not going to give it to the dogs, but
It's still better than saying dog.
Right. And well, because
Softer.
yeah, it's a softer. And
Yeah.
think about dog in that present time,
Yeah. They were scavengers or they were work animals.
and and I've been into areas of I've been into Athens and other places, and where you see dogs, they literally are scavengers. They run around and they eat the stuff that's dead or whatever, and you can see that in the Old Testament as well. But he tells her this, and so instead of saying something, snarky, and it kind of sounds snarky back, but she's not being that. She's actually admitting that what he's telling her is the truth, that the Jews considered the Gentiles dogs, a pejorative term.
Yes.
Because they were outside the covenant. They were unclean.
Yes. And she realized that. She understood the Jewish culture enough to understand that.
And here he is talking to an unclean woman in that culture.
Yes. And he did that often.
Yes. He did it to the lady of Samaritan well.
Yeah.
He did it to the woman who touched his robe. He did it
Yes.
with the lady that was caught in adultery.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's talking
Mary
to people.
Magdalene?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So he's talking to her and she says, "Yes, Lord, but even the little dogs," so she uses the same word in the Greek that he used.
Yes.
But even the little dogs get bread from under the table. What struck me was that she gave back to him the concept of not just grace by a master with an animal, but the understanding of the true nature of God's mercy, even given to his children, people of Israel, overflows to everybody else. And think about Israel in the Old Testament, and what it was purposed to do was to be a light to the world.
To the world. Yes,
showing
to draw all men.
to God.
Mhm.
They were to be a
Yes.
beacon
Yeah.
because of what God would do, and it was doing in them over and over again. That was the goal. So here is she's telling them, when God is merciful, he is so overabundantly gracious and merciful and kind that anybody associated generally is a recipient of something from that grace and that mercy.
Yes.
So think about when you're married to or have a relationship with a person who's not a Christian, who's not saved. God overflows in your life those grace and mercy to you that overflows in the lives of other people, and they see it.
Yes.
And they see
Other
it.
people are blessed by you being a Christian.
Well, one would hope so.
Yes.
One would.
Well, yes.
One would hope so. And so he tells her, because God has given her this insight. That's the only way she's going to get it.
That's it.
Is that she understood the nature of God in light of the gods that her culture worshiped. She understood who Christ was, what his authority was,
Mm-hmm.
and what that authority could do when she gave him the response back. Because it's not just being snarky. She was actually communicating to him that I understand that to be true. And she accepts it as truth and then says, but. So in my mind, I'm going, but because of the nature of God and the character of who he is, and because of how he blesses his children
Yes.
and his people through his son, Jesus Christ, that overflows to the world.
Yes,
And that-
when we live holy, righteous lives, in other words, when we're set apart, we're not living for the world, we're not living for man's approval. We're showing Christ.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But for her, that I think what was striking me was that she was countercultural. She understood her culture and what it could not do, but she knew what Christ and his authority could do, even if it was only the residual of what he was doing in Israel.
yes.
And so he says to her, your daughter basically is healed. He
Yes.
grants the request.
Yes.
And she goes home and her daughter's healed. What amazing story. It's been kind of ruminating on this a couple weeks now, just in and out, kind of thinking about it. But it's amazing when you look at this, and this is just us working through talking about it. So it's just amazing her understanding of what God could do. So when we're out there walking around in the world, it's not like we're trying to be holier than thou, using an old school phrase, as much as just trying to be able to be like Christ. That's what a Christ follower was supposed to be, like Christ, with the
Yes.
goal to be able to share the gifts that God has given to us to other people by being, showing the fruit of the Spirit.
Yes. Yes. If we are not showing Christ to others, they don't see him.
Well, yeah, the one way that people see Christ is through the as believers are supposed to do. Now, there are people listen to this that may not necessarily be believers and think, oh, well, we're just hypocrites. Well, that's probably true.
Everybody falls short of the glory of God.
Yeah. So, we can,
But if you're striving to live a Christ-like life, that is the goal. And that's what other people see. And that's what we need to push toward.
Yeah.
Is to be the light.
Right. So when you say, well, what's this got to do with the world in which we live in? Well, think about ancient Tyre in this period, and that this lady is coming to Jesus in. Think about what was going on over there in light of what is going on now.
Yes.
Think about all the events that are occurring or have occurred over the last it's the last 2 years, and see how it's ramping up. And
this pagan society of Tyre did the Baal worship, which had all the prostitutes, the temple prostitutes. It had all of the decadence and all of the, orgies and all the things that they considered worship going on out there.
And they had it out there where everybody could see it. And I've seen them archaeological shows where they talk about some of the areas in Rome and other places where it was quite decadent. And they had, graffiti on the wall that was pretty obscene. And they said, but that was normal in those areas for that time frame. So it was these things that were, they were doing. But interestingly, or maybe not interesting, those are the same kind of things that we see occurring now out there. And so, like the sage in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. What has been done will be done again. And then we see it here now. So, don't be surprised what you see, because this is nothing new. It doesn't make it right. It's just not new.
That's right.
And so as then and now, the way that response is, we have to stand out from it and not participate in it.
Yes, because, if you read Ezekiel, Ezekiel talks about the fall of Tyre, and he prophesies, and that's a long time before it actually happens. And he's very detailed. And sin has consequences. A pagan society has consequences. Yeah,
and that's going to be a difficult time for, in my opinion, the country in which
we
live is not necessarily, blatantly not living in a life that from my perspective, it's pretty decadent.
Yes.
More so than, I can recall, many years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's been there, but it's just not been blatant. It's not been as blatant. And maybe it's just naivete on my part, but I kind of been around a little bit. So, I would say that it's a little more out in the open and very obvious. So, well, I think we're going to be running out of time here, Oma.
That's right.
So we probably should.
We're going to wrap it up.
So we won't be this long on every topic, but I thought that this is the way we would start and have that discussion and kind of set the stage for what we're going to try to do over the next episodes.
Blessings.
So we'll leave it at that. Blessings. Well, that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Please subscribe and follow us on YouTube and other social media sites. We are at Cairn Global. That's global with an E. Thank you for listening to The Rock Pile.